Nature could be framed in terms of being our life support system. Nature provides us with everything that we need as individuals, as communities, as economies. It protects us from the impacts of climate change. It also, if looked after properly, if restored and protected, it can draw down and store carbon and help with the cooling of the planet. Bottom line is there is no humanity without flourishing nature. This process has a name. It's called nature-based solutions. So what are nature-based solutions? Very important question. There's lots of confusion about what counts. Nature-based solutions are place-based partnerships between people and nature. So this could involve the protection of forests in a water catchment, which can reduce erosion, landslides, flood risk and so forth, or the restoration of a coastal ecosystem like a salt marsh or a mangrove forest, which can reduce the energy from waves, reduce coastal flooding, bind and stabilise the shoreline. Nature-based solutions also include the more sustainable management of our working lands. 30% of biodiversity loss is driven by land use change, and land use change is one of the biggest sources of greenhouse gas emissions. So through practices such as agroforestry, which is growing crops among trees and trees among crops, nature-based solutions also involve bringing nature into our cities, into our urban areas through green walls and green roofs, urban forests. And they provide all sorts of benefits, mental and physical benefits, but also reduce flooding, reduce the impacts from heat waves and so forth. And while we have a growing body of evidence that in a rapidly changing world, we need biodiversity, we need diversity in life more than ever. So what is biodiversity? This is actually a really important question. Many associate the word biodiversity with, say, an iconic species like a polar bear or a panda or a mahogany tree. Those are all important, but they're not biodiversity. Biodiversity is a property of the natural world, and it is the diversity of that from the level of the gene to the level of the ecosystem. It's also all the interactions, all the glue that holds all those different layers of biological organisation together. So currently, we have an economy that is in service of material wealth. And this situation has produced climate change, it's produced biodiversity loss, and it's increasing poverty and inequality around the world. In order to address climate change and biodiversity loss in particular, we need to change our economic model. We need an economic model that is in service, not just of life, but in service of maintaining the rich web of life that we have on planet Earth. Why is nature's biodiversity loss a really big problem that we face? Okay, the science is really clear on this. You reduce the biodiversity of a system, so you reduce the species richness of it, for example, or the genetic diversity of it, and you reduce its resilience. You start taking species away, the evidence is clear, you get greater susceptibility to fire, to disease, to storms and floods. Many nature-based solutions can be quite a high upfront cost of restoring a degraded ecosystem. But people working in businesses are realizing that, for example, commodity production landscapes, whether that's latex or palm oil, coffee, tea, cocoa, or the productivity of the production of those commodities is being compromised by the impacts of climate change combined with the impacts of habitat loss and fragmentation. The flip side of that is those companies that are then investing in nature-based solutions within those commodity production landscapes can reduce the impacts they're having on nature whilst also building resilience within those landscapes by reducing flood risk, by reducing erosion, landslides, and so forth, and by maintaining ecosystems that have pollinators in, that have fertile soils. And as I've argued, that's essential because unless the ecosystem's healthy, we don't get any solutions from nature. But is it also benefiting local communities, and who in those local communities? And that influences their effectiveness. Are marginalised communities getting any benefits at all? Are the rights and knowledges of Indigenous peoples being respected? Are we having leadership from Indigenous communities? And all of these different moving parts. Now, some ways that might seem daunting, but actually there are so many brilliant grassroots organisations through which finance from the corporate sector can be channeled to tailor different interventions to that local context. And so all these factors in the broader landscape into which companies can invest will at least stabilise their productivity, if not increase their yield in a changing climate. So it's an absolute no-brainer to do this, where we bring the true diverse value of nature central to decision-making in governments, in corporate accounting. Even if you only really care about carbon, you're not going to get that carbon unless you invest in ecosystems that are really healthy, and those ecosystems are diverse. Nature-based solutions have an incredibly important role to play in meeting our net zero goals. What do we need in order to address the challenges that we face? I think there is need for massive increase in investment in nature-based solutions all over the planet. We have a huge funding gap to meet on protecting and restoring the biosphere, which is our life support system. The recent estimates upwards of $800 billion a year are needed to plug that gap. There is evidence that many nature-based solutions can be cost-effective, particularly over time, and particularly when you take into account the multiple benefits that they bring. There was a study that came out that showed, for example, that in coastal defence projects, nature-based approaches such as restoring salt marshes, coral reefs, oyster reefs, seagrass beds and so forth, offered 2 to 5 times higher cost effectiveness than engineered approaches. But what we find is it's not that nature is better than technology. What we really need is both, but they deliver in different timescales. So what would 2050 ideally look like? Where do we need to be? We need to have flourishing landscapes, connected, biodiverse landscapes with people part of, not separate from those landscapes, that are doing lots of different things for us. Because it's clear that whilst we know a lot of change is coming, we're not sure how that change is going to manifest at the local level. The benefits that working with nature can bring this century are critically important. People sometimes get hung up on, will this ecosystem exist in 1,000 years? Well, frankly, what happens in the next 50 years is what's going to determine whether humanity has a sustainable trajectory on this planet or not.
When land meets water, amazing things happen.
Wetlands store prolific amounts of carbon. They reduce the flood risk, they treat water, and they're also fantastic for our health and well-being. But we're experiencing natural capital depletion. Natural capital, it's everything in nature that benefits people. So it can be the soil, the water, the trees, animals. We've lost 90% of our wetlands in the UK. So all this incredible habitat that's always been doing this work is being taken away from us. And that's why we've got to do something. We've got to invest to restore the natural capital. Hi, I'm Pete. I'm the head of philanthropy at the Wildfire and Wetland Trust. Steart Marshes is a 400-hectare site. It's one of the UK's largest coastal managed realignment projects. Since its creation 8 years ago, there's been an explosion of biodiversity.
The biodiversity of this site has been improving year on year. My name is Alice Laver, and I'm the site manager at Steart Marshes.
We've seen vast amounts of carbon stored in Steart. The carbon stored in 4 years, it was equivalent to 1 million trees across 10 years.
We know that wetlands store more carbon than any other habitat in the whole world. The carbon storage on wetlands starts from day one of creation. As soon as you let the tide in, or as soon as you let that water in, you're starting that process. Steart Marshes capture carbon in a couple of ways. First and foremost, when the tide comes in, it brings in mud and silt. That in itself has carbon. That silt will settle and it buries salt marsh plants, and those plants also have carbon. You multiply that across the world, it's massive.
It shows the potential that these habitats have of addressing the climate crisis. A recent study by FTech looked at the investment required over the next 10 years for the UK to achieve its nature targets, and it identified in excess of a £50 billion shortfall. We know that the government and philanthropic sources alone are not going to fill this gap. But what's really exciting is the private sector can, in a range of different ways. So say a housing developer will get a greater return on the sale of a property if it overlooks green or blue space. You could think in terms of nature-based solutions for something like the water sector. Treatment wetlands can improve the quality of water in a natural way. You could also think in terms of the investment to offset carbon emissions, meeting the demands of the private sector in achieving their net zero ambitions.
Business leaders have been brilliant in responding to our call for a blue recovery. The real challenge for us is to turn that interest and that curiosity into a plan of action that really delivers and delivers quickly.
So WWT launched our Blue Recovery proposals in 2020. And at the heart of that was for the restoration and creation of 100,000 hectares of wetlands in the UK. The starting point for the Blue Recovery Leaders Group was how do we overcome this disconnect between the value of wetlands, the proven value of wetlands, and the rate at which they are being created. The companies that are taking a lead in this space are doing extremely well. As we go forward, it's going to become the expectation of companies, and the risk of not acting now is being left behind and losing stakeholders, whether that's customers or shareholders, as a result of that.
We believe there's hope for the future. We will be building wetland treatment systems. We'll be building a flood defence scheme. We'll be building a mental health prescription, and we'll be building livelihoods for people as well.
We know that marshes protect businesses and homes against flooding. There's also the agricultural side of things, so they're productive. So we've got salt marsh, lamb and beef being produced. The local community have got access to a huge network of paths which they can enjoy on their bikes, walking, running, on their horses, and a lot of them use it to now get to school, which is really lovely.
We're wanting a new generation of people who are blue engineers and green engineers who benefit from the value of our wetlands. They're building the skills, they're building the knowledge, and they're out there creating new wetlands for us.
I think it really is breaking new ground. It feels like we are really looking at pioneering some quite new and innovative approaches. And the more we can get that message out and the more we can demonstrate its effectiveness, the more we can start to see these solutions scale up.
We call our Earth the blue planet because 2/3 of the Earth's surface is covered by oceans.
We exist in this broader context, right? We exist in the context where the ocean is inherently connected to the land. It's really important that we think about our impacts on nature.
We as a human society have increased the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere over the last 200 years at an unprecedented rate. It has never gone so high so fast. We need to counter those sources of CO2. We have to create sinks. And those sinks will help us actually get rid of that CO2.
The ocean can mitigate its climate change globally. It's done a good job already. It's soaked up the extra heat, it's soaked up the extra carbon dioxide very well. It's just we're now at a tipping point.
It's incredibly important that we work with the power of the ocean to help restore our planet. Our mission is to remove billions of tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere with coastal carbon capture. So just to set the table, we have a lot to do when it comes to carbon removal. There's more than 2 trillion tons of excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere today. We are removing such minuscule amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere today, and our net zero targets are falling behind. My name is Kelly Earhart. I'm co-founder and president at Vesta. Vesta is an organization that's working to advance the science of coastal carbon capture, which is a mechanism to remove up to 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere every year. by just harnessing one of Earth's most natural, most ancient processes, known as rock weathering. A slow chemical reaction that happens every time that rocks come into contact with water. This process is what drives carbon removal on Earth over very long timescales, so millions of years. We accelerate that by choosing one of the most efficient minerals at performing that process, a common mineral called olivine. We grind it into a sand, and then we bring it to coastal areas, where it dissolves.
Olivine is a naturally occurring mineral that is found all over the world. There are even beautiful natural olivine beaches in places like Hawaii. As the olivine dissolves, it transfers CO2 into a different, stable, safe form of carbon called bicarbonate. My name is Grace Andrews, and I'm the Vice President and Head of Science at Vesta. Vesta has launched the world's first field trial of coastal enhanced weathering in Long Island, New York. This was something that had never been done before. We had the opportunity to place 500 tons of olivine sand on a beach, and we have been rigorously monitoring it, quantifying carbon removal. It is enough to demonstrate the potential of scale for this solution.
This is the first ever deployment of olivine sand for enhanced weathering in the entire world. The aim of this project at North Sea Beach is to understand the rate of carbon capture and measure any ecological effects on the surrounding area to get a better understanding of coastal carbon capture and enhanced weathering to make this a scalable project in the future.
One of the benefits of olivine is that it makes the ocean more alkaline. It offsets the ocean acidification that has occurred.
With this increased CO2 drawdown, the oceans are becoming more acid. The oceans are usually very stable, so the animals and plants and other organisms that live there are not used to changes in pH.
Ocean acidification has severely changed the ability for shelf-forming organisms, such as corals, shellfish, but also tiny snails that swim in the ocean to form their shells. They become more vulnerable, and as a consequence, local ecosystems might collapse.
It's a problem that has massive consequence, not just to the animals in our ocean, but to all of us humans here on land as well, because we depend on them for our sustenance, for our general livelihoods.
So far, we have seen an increase in alkalinity. We are definitely measuring an increase in pH of our sites with olivine compared to without olivine. It is really exciting and gives us a lot of hope that this project will work in the future.
Often one of the first questions we get is, okay, so you're mining the rocks and you're transporting it. That must be really expensive. You must emit a lot of carbon in that process. Coastal carbon capture is somewhere between 90 to 95% efficient, which means that for every ton of carbon that we emit into the atmosphere, when we do milling, shipping, deployment, we can capture 20 tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. It's permanent. Once carbon is removed through this process, it stays fixed in seawater for tens of thousands of years at the least. Coastal carbon capture is a planetary scale solution.
The pilot trial is the first step in the process of scaling this technology. Next year, we hope to increase the size of our deployment by 10 times. Over the next 10 years, we hope to reach global scale potential.
A future that I imagine is a biosphere that's balanced. And what's more, imagine a future that is more beautiful than the world we live in today.
We need to address climate change on the global scale. In the next decades, if we don't do something, the ocean will lose its capacity to help us. And if we improve things, it'll gain it back again.
Now that we have advanced our understanding of our impacts on nature, it's really a time unlike any other, that we have an opportunity to show exactly how we can be a net positive to nature. It's really important that gigaton scale solutions like coastal carbon capture can be advanced and hopefully in the future leave this planet as a place that our children and our children's children can thrive.
Wetlands and peatlands are by far the largest carbon stocks that we have across Earth's ecosystems. We've estimated that they cover less than 5% of the land surface, but they could be responsible for capturing up to 25% of the amount of carbon that soils can store across the globe.
Mangroves are in the coastal areas, in the nexus between the water and the terrestrial system. There is a lot of roots. The roots are deep in the system, and each of these roots are made of carbon and other components, of course, but that carbon is stored there.
Mangroves store much more carbon per square mile than tropical forests.
They are absolutely critical ecosystems.
Mangrove restoration is tricky. There is a very low success rate. I am Andres Santana, and I'm the Ridge to Reef Program Director for OSA Conservation. We started by doing some research trials, different ways of planting with small plots and a couple of community members that had knowledge of the mangrove. From there, we coupled local knowledge with scientific knowledge. We've been able to restore close to 50 hectares of mangrove.
Eso de la destrucción del manglar viene desde mis abuelos, mis tíos y mis antepasados, digamos, que fueron habitando el humedal, en la cual se explotó mucho en corta de mangle, en leña, en varillas que se le vendió a la compañía bananera en aquella época, y daños también ambientales, que rayos, huracancillos que han pegado, entonces eso ha afectado también parte del daño al humedal.
En lo que es la parte social, de hecho, los manglares es uno de los ecosistemas que están algo abandonados, ¿verdad? No les han dado ese valor como a otros ecosistemas de bosque.
Mangroves are key for having a balanced ecosystem. We work to conserve that intense biodiversity that we find.
La parte de restauración es importante, primero porque, bueno, a mí lo que me enamora, digamos, son las especies que hay aquí, que son únicas, las estrategias que ellas tienen de sobrevivencia.
Mangroves help with connectivity. They are an aquatic terrestrial system. They provide the resources for migratory birds.
Se ve garzas, hay búho, hay ranas que son, bueno, familia del sapo, y etcétera, animalitos.
There are hammerhead sharks that depend on Costa Rica's mangroves to thrive out in the ocean. We also have a lot of mollusks, bivalves, and others.
Principalmente en la parte social porque brinda recursos como la piangua, la pesca, otros moluscos, que son importantes para los habitantes de locales, ¿verdad? Que tanto lo utilizan como un recurso de subsistencia.
Nos quita trabajo porque al haber el daño ambiental, se termina la extracción de piango, que en la cual vivimos, la pesca se retira porque no tienen a dónde ellos lograr esconderse de los enemigos externos que ellos tienen entre el mismo río.
La tema que hemos hallado, digamos, de la concha de hacha, la que tiene barbilla, aquí casi no hay, esta.
The mangroves are really key for preventing and mitigating floodings.
They provide shelter from storms. They mitigate a lot of the erosion that could happen along the coast if they weren't present.
They regulate also because they behave with the tide. They act as filters too.
Nature doesn't need us. We need nature.
We can learn from Costa Rica, who have managed to transform their environmental space. They've doubled the amount of environmental land that is protected and regrowing ecosystems across the country.
Todavía no se está notando porque estamos como quien dice, eso se está iniciando, más o menos tenemos como unos 3 años y medio por ahí. Tal vez no lo vaya a ver yo por mi edad, pero la juventud, la que viene, que es la que va a lograr esa dicha de ver esos trabajos que nosotros estamos viendo también.
Greenhouse gas removal, or GGR for short, is any human activity which takes greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere, captures them and stores them away durably so they don't get back out. That can be in rocks and minerals, it can be in the living world, trees and soils, it can be oceans, or it can be in long-lived products. We know that greenhouse gas removal is going to be really important as part of achieving our climate goals. I'm Steve Smith, a senior researcher in greenhouse gas removal. The Greenhouse Gas Removal Demonstrators project is funded by UKRI, the UK Research Councils. It's a 5-year project aimed at trialling and developing different ways to capture carbon dioxide back out of the atmosphere and store it away. We need a way of rapidly learning about these techniques, working out which ones will be more or less successful in different situations, and being able to support those ones that look most promising. We're taking ideas that up until now have been concepts in scientific papers and in scientific models, and we're actually trialling them in the real world. And there are many ways of removing greenhouse gases and putting them into land and boosting biodiversity, water quality, food productivity. We're testing 5 different methods for greenhouse gas removal in this programme. This is pioneering research. As we learn about how these different removal methods work in the real world, that's crucial information for us to feed back into our scientific models to provide better data and better advice. One is biochar. This is where we take biomass, materials that are residues from agriculture or forestry, and we turn them into a charcoal-like substance which can be ploughed back into the soils or used in materials, and that locks away the carbon from the biomass durably. And that can actually improve soil quality as well as storing carbon. Biochar done well has a component of carbon that can last for centuries or even thousands of years. Number 2 is enhanced rock weathering. Some types of rock naturally soak up CO2 as part of Earth's carbon cycle. If those rocks are crushed up and spread out on the land, we can speed up that process and maybe even have some additional benefits for the soils and the crops we're growing there. Number 3 is perennial biomass crops, crops that grow for more than a year and can grow quite large. These are crops like miscanthus and coppice willow, which have roots that stay for several years underground and lock away carbon. And also we can use the above ground carbon, the biomass that's grown, for electricity or heat generation. And if we capture the CO2 while they're making energy and store that away, that's a greenhouse gas removal process. Number 4 is restoring degraded peatlands. Now, peatlands are really important carbon stores. In fact, they store about double the amount of carbon to forests. These are incredibly carbon-rich soils that are often drained for activities like growing crops. Now, when they're drained, they start to emit carbon dioxide, but if we restore them, we can steadily reduce those emissions and hopefully get them to a point where they're taking more CO2 out of the atmosphere. One important question with peatlands is how we can restore them while still getting a lot of use out of the land. They've been dried over the years because we use the land for a variety of things, including agriculture. And so whether it's possible to still keep growing crops whilst also restoring the peatlands is a really interesting and important area of research at the moment. Fifthly, we've got woodland creation and management. Trees are well known to all of us as fantastic natural carbon stores. And we have hugely depleted woodlands here in the UK. So restoring them and doing that well means that we can remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere and hopefully deliver a range of benefits for nature and the environment in the process. Woodlands are fantastic not only as stores of carbon, but as havens of biodiversity, as ways of regulating our water, keeping it clean and managing flooding and drought. And also they're spaces that people want to enjoy. It's not just about creating new woodlands, planting new trees, but it's about protecting the old growth woodlands and forests we have. These are some of the most biodiverse, valuable places on Earth. In order for these different methods to actually scale successfully, we want to know how much they can remove, how quickly, how effectively, any other emissions involved in the processes of doing this. One of the most exciting things to emerge in this program is we're seeing the 5 demonstration projects actually work together and discover ways of co-deploying these removal methods together. So we're finding out that some of the biomass grown in the perennial biomass crops demonstrator can be used to make biochar. We're finding that biochar could be applied in woodlands or maybe even in peatlands. And that, I think, leads to some really interesting potential opportunities for how we scale these things better and more quickly. The methods we're looking at here in the UK all can be applied in different parts of the world more broadly. And actually, different parts of the world are going to have real advantages in different removal methods. A really key part that's missing from the jigsaw puzzle in removals at the moment is people being able to get an economic reward, an incentive for doing it. Removing carbon is a global good, and so it should be rewarded as such, but currently there are very few public policies, very few businesses who do this routinely. So we need to find ways of incentivizing people who can do removals to do it and do it well. So if we want people to be doing these things at scale, how are they going to make a viable living from this? How are companies going to make a profit? Policymakers are expressing a real desire for information on greenhouse gas removal. It's coming up very rapidly as a topic on policy agendas. And so what we're doing here is providing reliable advice and information that will inform the strategies that countries and the world takes as we try to fix climate change. I think all of these approaches have some promise. There's no one silver bullet to fix this problem, but a lot of them are going to be especially well suited in particular contexts, particular locations with particular people and skills. We're discovering the challenges and the opportunities, and we're learning, getting a much richer picture about how to scale these and how to scale them well.
There's something special about the sequoia groves. I mean, there's only about 80 groves on Earth. Sequoias can be about 300 feet tall, and the really big ones can be 100 feet around. Generations of people have experienced it the same way I do, with just awe. There's entire wilderness areas, entire forests that are not coming back in my lifetime, or my son's lifetime, or his kid's lifetime. I don't see a machine that's a tree replacement out there. We need the forests. We have to ask ourselves, what is it going to take to change the trajectory that we're on? Garrett Dickman, Yosemite National Park's forest ecologist. I'm here to make sure that there's forests for the future. My vision for the future is to look to the very far past, to look to indigenous practices and using traditional ecological knowledge in combination with science in order to manage the forests into the future. Indigenous people have been managing this land for tens of thousands of years. Trees were large and widely spaced and created this beautiful, incredible landscape. Fire was the main tool they used to thin the forest of the trees and to get plants that were beneficial to them. Fire is the process that recycles the dead. Indigenous people, especially in California, had a relationship with nature that was one of reciprocity. They would take something from nature, but then they would give something back. And sometimes that gift would be fire, and it would increase the productivity of the landscape. And it made their lives better. It made the forest better. We've shifted that mindset, lost some of that idea and way of thinking. When Euro-Americans arrived, they put a stop to the flames that kept that forest alive, and they put a stop to the people that were managing the forest. There used to be anywhere from 5 to 30 trees per acre, and now in some places be hundreds of trees per acre. There's also a certain amount of wood that would be on the ground historically, probably 10 to 15 tons per acre. And now we're seeing places where there's anywhere from 50 to upwards to 500 tons per acre. And now the atmosphere is hotter and drier than it ever was before. These forests in no way evolved for the types of fires that we're seeing today. Neither are giant sequoias, which are one of the most fire-adapted species on Earth. Within 2 years, we lost nearly 20% of all giant sequoias on Earth from high severity fire. 80% of the groves have burned at this point. I try to protect sequoias moments before they burn. There was one grove that really struck me in 2021. We went down into the grove, fire was approaching, and we removed leaf litter and the broken branches and the small trees from around the bases of about 4 giant sequoias. A week later, the entire forest had converted to ash and charcoal. And only those 4 trees that we had removed the fuels from had survived, and every other tree in the forest was gone. In Yosemite, we've been adapting to this new reality that we need to hit basically the reset button on the forest. We're going to have to prepare the forest to accept fire. We've been doing restorative thinning so that we could implement prescribed fire. We're removing this very small fraction of material, this material that can actually be really harmful for the forest. We're not doing logging. Once we get to that stage where fire can be accepted, we can use sort of these traditional ecological knowledge, we can use cultural burning in order to fully restore those forests and make it far more resilient into the future. We restored this location, which is a famous viewpoint. There was actually a postage stamp from the 1930s. We did selective thinning, removed the trees, and then we burned using prescribed fire, and now it's back to being restored meadow. The cost per acre of doing restoration is a fraction of the cost of inaction. You can measure it in the billions upon billions of dollars that it costs to suppress the fires, to put them out, for putting the communities back together, the impacts to water quality, and anything that we might use the forest for. It's not like forests are optional. We need them, and they go away, and we do too. I think what's holding us back from changing the way we're doing things and changing the way that we're managing is that we haven't decided that this is a big enough priority yet. And I'm not sure what tipping point we're waiting for. I'm not sure what it is that we need in order to be prodded to take more aggressive action. For me, I've seen enough. I've seen enough communities burn over. I know enough firefighters that have lost their lives. I've counted so many dead giant sequoias. When you start to feel it on your skin and in your lungs and in your heart, then I think that's the point where people start to change and when we start to get very serious about making this a reality. I think the ultimate question of our time is this how we want things to be? Is this really what we want to pass on to the future? I don't think it is. I think we want something different. I think the potential of nature is the potential of us. Nature is incredibly resilient if you don't push it too hard. And I think the same could be said about us.
In the 1970s, the Amazon rainforest sequestered 2 billion tons of CO2 every year, more than the annual net CO2 output of Russia. But 17% of the rainforest has been lost since then. And if that figure exceeds 20 to 25%, the Amazon will shift from being a carbon sink to a carbon emitter. As part of its national commitments to counter past deforestation, Brazil is aiming to restore 8 to 12 million hectares of forest by 2030. This project requires native tree seeds to restore the Amazon's biodiverse ecosystem. In 2007, the Xingu Seed Network was established to supply these seeds, bringing together indigenous communities, farmers, local governments, and NGOs.
Eu sou a Bruna Ferreira, sou bióloga e diretora da rede de sementes do Xingu. A rede de sementes ela é uma iniciativa que ela beneficia as comunidades de várias formas. Ela é uma alternativa de renda para essas comunidades. Quem compra sementes hoje são proprietários rurais, organizações da sociedade civil que têm projetos para restauração florestal. Historicamente, culturalmente, as mulheres são as guardiãs da cultura. Então, são elas que vão para a mata fazer a coleta de sementes e, posteriormente, o beneficiamento. A rede de sementes hoje, ela tem 565 coletores, ajudando financeiramente o maior número de pessoas.
As mulheres do Yarangue, elas já têm essa consciência de que elas têm um papel muito importante, não só para a comunidade indígena, do povo delas, mas sim para o povo indígena e para o mundo, né?
A força dessas mulheres é impressionante também, né? Hoje elas são reconhecidas pela comunidade que elas vivem como entidade, né? Como um grupo tão forte que se tornou uma entidade para essa comunidade.
Essa técnica de semeadura direto, ela já existia e ela foi adaptada para a nossa realidade, o que chamamos de muvuca de sementes. E consiste no estudo de olhar dentro dessa área que precisa ser restaurada, quais eram as espécies que estavam ali e que precisam voltar para aquele ambiente. Ela é efetiva, dá grandes resultados e apresenta uma maior diversidade nas áreas implementadas. Em 13 anos de existência, a rede começa em 2007 através dessa demanda e até hoje a gente já viabilizou sementes para restaurar 6 mil hectares de áreas degradadas e gerando uma renda de 4,2 milhões de reais para essas comunidades. E que isso gera renda, então isso diminui as queimadas. O trabalho com a rede de sementes ele é reconhecido pelas comunidades, é elas que decidem o potencial que elas têm para coleta todos os anos e, posteriormente, o que vão fazer com o recurso gerado por essa atividade. Ela mostra que a gente pode manter, essas comunidades podem manter, devem manter essa floresta em pé. Essa iniciativa, ela, ao mostrar que existe uma alternativa de renda vinda da floresta, isso mostra à juventude que eles podem sim ter uma alternativa para além do desmatamento, para além de ter que queimar.
Landscape restoration means that you're increasing the capacity of the land to sequester carbon, and by sequestering carbon, you're then able to have a greater impact on helping to address the climate challenge.
So it's not sustainability that we need, it's regeneration. We need to regenerate the atmosphere, we need to regenerate the soils, we need to regenerate forests and farms and natural areas.
Reintroducing is an ecological restoration company formed by a global team of scientists, ecologists, and engineers to create the tools necessary for doing scalable restoration globally.
The people that are being tasked with restoring the natural world don't have the tools necessary to address the industrial scale degradation of landscapes.
Monitoring is important because allow to the stakeholders and the environmental managers to take decision and understand the information of the site. If they don't have information, they cannot take the proper decision that they need to take in each step in the restoration process.
The conventional way of restoring land primarily involves people going out, manually planting trees, or using ground-based systems which have limited access. But the world is not uniform, it's not flat land everywhere. Those conventional methods, therefore, have limited application.
It's actually really slow if you compare the number of people that you have to have in the field for doing the traditional method.
You need to observe that landscape and understand what's naturally happening in that landscape. What kind of trees, plants and shrubs regenerate? What kind of animals make their homes there? You need to understand how it works.
Dendra Systems uses drones to capture data and enable us to access areas which otherwise wouldn't be able to be. The imagery is at the blade of grass or veins on a leaf on a tree resolution, which is significantly higher resolution than traditional data sets like satellite. We then feed that data into our AI algorithms. Those algorithms generate an assessment of how that land is performing, and then we use that assessment to drive interventions like weed control and tree planting.
We can capture 300 hectares a day with our drone in ultra-high resolution. If you compare the number of people that you have to put in the field just to obtain the same data, it could be taking weeks or months, and you need an army of people just doing these surveys.
The majority of Dendra's work is actually on monitoring. 80% is about capturing data, developing analytics, making recommendations so that we can get the best outcomes. 20% of what we do is on the actual automation of planting.
The drone can carry 700 kilograms and is approximately 400 million of seeds.
700 kilos is, I'm reliably told, the weight of 2 polar bears. So that gives you a sense of how many seeds we're spreading.
It's important that the drone carry different types of seeds because we encourage to plant biodiversity. We don't want to plant monocultures, so we are planting a whole full ecosystem.
In any typical seed mix that we spread, have about 50 different species, which enables us to restore not only tree species, but the shrubs and grasses, which are essential as well.
So the best forests are these forests that combine many different tree types and species of many different ages.
The benefits of having an international team stem from the fact that this is a global problem, which requires global perspectives. You actually have to have people with skill sets that vary from AI and software, all the way through to understanding the fungi in the soil, all the way through to having a deep understanding of how can we create scalable systems to address the challenge which is on a global scale.
There is a need for this technology because we are really good in destroying the ecosystem, but we don't go in the same velocity restoring that ecosystem. And this technology is so important to increase the velocity and the scalability to restore all the destruction that we have in the ecosystem.
Natural landscapes help to mitigate 30% of human carbon emissions. And if we continue on the rate of degradation today, where we're losing 10 million hectares a year, we're reducing the ability of the natural environment to absorb the impact of human carbon emissions. If we scale up our restoration, we scale up the potential for land to sequester carbon and to help address the climate challenge we face.
The right kind of forest is essential to the future of this planet. The wrong kind of forest, these large-scale monospecies plantations, the sooner we can transform them into something better, the better off the planet and humanity will be. Digital technologies have a foundational role to play.
If we want to solve the climate problem, we have to figure out how forests can help mitigate climate change. The forests of New England have the potential to make a major impact on climate mitigation within the next 10 or 20 years.
Forests are more than just a resource for timber. They mitigate climate change, reduce the impact of natural disasters, and are the most biologically diverse ecosystems on land. The New England Forestry Foundation is working towards a global standard for sustainable forest management.
My name is Bob Purcell, and I'm the Executive Director of the New England Forestry Foundation. Exemplary forestry is a way of managing our forests that makes them more diverse. So we'll wind up with more products that come out of the forest, larger trees, different species. That enables people to found new businesses based on those products. So part of this is providing the basic resource for innovation, creativity, and new businesses in the future. For us to have a sustainable planet, we need to get more of our materials from biological systems that can be renewed and sustained for future generations. Exemplary forestry is a pathway to that future. So with exemplary forestry, we come in a little bit more frequently to stands and try to thin them out to take advantage of this. So the white pine is the lower regeneration layer that we have that's ready to take off as soon as we give it some more sunlight. That's a decision we have to make all the time. Is it time to cut that tree and give the space up to this tree?
I'm Frank Lowenstein, Chief Operating Officer at New England Forestry Foundation. Foresters around the world need to be doing their part to solve the climate crisis by making sure that our forests store as much carbon as they can while still delivering the stream of products that society relies upon. We can't continue to have the economy grow with the same level of throughput that it has now and sustain ourselves on planet Earth. So in the long term, we need a circular economy. We need an economy that reuses resources. We can't keep using land, abusing land, and then throwing it away.
This discussion has been happening for decades. How do we make our forests more productive? What are the best standards? It's possible to develop these kind of exemplary forestry standards in every region of the world. This is a global problem. We know that if we solve the problem in Massachusetts or in Vermont or in New England, it's only just a small part of the overall goal that we need to hit. So international cooperation would allow us to address this in a global sense, have a major impact, and actually produce the kind of numbers that could have an effect on climate change. We don't have to develop new technology. We simply have to make some good policy decisions. We take the standards and we say, what if we applied these standards to more land, what would happen? And the results are amazing. And if we did this in Western Maine, it's like taking every car in Maine off the road for a century.
We really need to make a massive difference on our carbon emissions in the next 10 years if we intend to leave behind us a planet that our grandchildren will find joyful to live in.
Change never happens as fast as you want it to happen. We're ready to go. Things are beginning to move forward, but we need to accelerate that change very quickly. Now's our time. We can do this. All we need to do is take one step forward, and the impact on climate change will be immediate.
Freetown is a magical city. This is a beautiful, busy, cultural, economic, bustling space.
From any vantage point in the city, you're either seeing the Atlantic Ocean and the mountains, or both. But its population, it's exploded. That growth has actually impacted the forest. We lose something like 550,000 trees a year. The notion of Freetown the Tree Town was to reverse the deforestation, to afforest, to regreen the city. Technology is really, really at the heart of what we're doing. Growing trees means you've got to stay there with the trees. Means you've got to protect the trees. You've got to look after the trees and monitor their growth. And that's what we do.
house building is threatening our natural ecosystems. So wherever there was forest, there are now houses. The major challenges, flooding is the biggest, landslide susceptibility, water shortages, heat stress, urban heat island effect, massive. Freetown is one of the top 10 most climate impacted cities in the world. It is the most densely populated city in all of West Africa. We have exceeded our biocapacity. We're out of balance, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Planting trees is easy. To ensure that the process is successful, what's most important is the trees don't just get planted, but grow. We have a digital platform which enables the growth of those trees to be tracked to ensure that that sustainability is embedded. And we're really excited because we've planted just shy of 1 million trees.
But we've now set a new target. And so we'll get to at least 5 to 7 million by 2030. The app comes first. It's a very simple piece of technology that is in the hand of a community grower. Sort of that once they plant the tree, boom, they track it. Once they get that digital footprint of the tree and it's verified in our system, then we are able to systematically track the life and the health of the tree.
So let's say if I want to track this particular tree now, you see, I'll ensure that it fills up my camera, then I press the button in between. The process of tracking is also attached to collecting coordinates. At the initial track, a coordinate is attached to it, so it has the location of the planting. They also add a note. The note is the physical tags that we generate, and these tags are actually attached to a tree. Now, once you are done tracking, you have this dashboard. This dashboard tells you how many trees you've tracked, how many trees have been uploaded to the system. After these trees are verified, a token is issued. A token is like a coin that can be transferred from one user to another. If we need to pay growers, they have to demonstrate evidence of survival. So if you are responsible for 2,000 trees, and within a month you only grow something like 1,500, you only be paid for those 1,500. And that was how we are able to ensure that they provide the necessary care and support that is required to grow those trees.
The solution will need sustained investment, which is why we've moved into the development of this framework with carbon offsets.
Then now we are able to determine the carbon footprint, which then enables us to enter into the carbon market.
We create a context that leads to sustainable financing of the reforestation. What we're building here is a green circular economy. The resources that are generated then go back to the growing spaces to ensure that we can fund the reforestation. Our biggest advantage in all of this are our growers. Every tree that has ever been planted and grown is done so by those communities.
The trees are already in so many ways transformative, from the fact that they create employment, skills development for young people, economic product, because 60% of the trees are economic in one way or the other. So either they're fruit trees or they're medicinal trees. One of the things that is important, of course, is that we are planting indigenous trees.
We build a species mix. And so the species mix is designed to ensure that the level of biodiversity is enhanced within the context of a combination of species that are there.
I think the diversity of what we've done has made it interesting. You plant along roadsides, you plant along waterways. We have planting going on in schools, in cemeteries, in hospital compounds. As they grow up, they'll grow up into small little urban forests.
What we're trying to do, it is changing that relationship between people and nature, changing how we value it and understanding the risk dynamics associated with how we live. But if we expect people to change, We have to provide alternatives.
If we are not addressing that and just planting the trees, the rate of loss is going to be greater and the speed is going to be greater than the reforestation. To do that, we need to invest in other things. For example, in alternative cooking fuel. 82% of cooking fuel in Freetown is wood or charcoal based.
We are creating new technologies where we can get briquettes and biogas from waste that is generated from the Freetown waste plant.
It's been fascinating to have other cities come to us and say, we love what you're doing, we'd like to do it. Freetown, the Tree Town, is the precursor to Africa Tree Town. And for Freetown to be seen as a blueprint for other cities. The future city that I want to see is one where we bring nature back into the urban lived environment. There's a lot of skepticism about tree planting. So having the technology to confirm that what we're saying is happening has been very important to us. Freetown, the Tree Town is here to stay. And that makes me feel really, really happy.
Small island developing states matter. They've got extraordinary biodiversity and natural resources that support our planet, and they're extremely resilient, and we have a lot to learn from their resilience. About 65 million people live on over 1,000 islands that make up these small island developing states. And those 65 million people are part of our community, they're part of our planet. If we do nothing, that is a death sentence. And right now, with climate change, these island nations are at risk, and they now need our help. I was lucky enough to grow up on the west coast of Ireland and spent all of my time exploring tide pools and in the ocean. And it drove me to be a scientist, but also to recognize the importance of the ocean in our lives. And that gets me up every morning. I am Dr. Deborah Brosnan. I'm a marine scientist and climate risk expert. I work around the world looking at ways that nature-based solutions can help us adapt to climate change and create resilience and also help communities. Small island developing states are a group of island nations around the world. There are places like Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, St. Lucia, the Maldives. They create about less than 1% of greenhouse gas emissions, yet they suffer disproportionately. And the reason for that is that they are vulnerable to sea level rise, to increases in natural disasters, and they're vulnerable to having increased debt, which makes it harder for them to grow and develop sustainably. Small island developing states also have huge amounts of biodiversity that's important to us, all of us. Their oceans help to regulate climate. They have coral reefs that sustain 12% of the world's fisheries. Very important for us. A lot of these island nations are torn between the cycle of recovering from natural disasters, which costs a lot, and then trying to invest in growth. So we have to look at how do we make that debt more sustainable, and how do we support them to become more resilient so we can break that cycle. And nature-based solutions are one of the ways we can do it. Nature-based solutions is using the services that nature provides us for free, and it's leveraging those services in order to make ourselves more resilient. Those natural resources that surround the small island developing states are the first line of defense against hurricanes, against storms, against flooding. We need to make sure that they are in good condition, and for many of them it means restoration. Coral reefs are probably one of the best examples of nature-based solutions. They are one of the original technologies that communities around the world have been using for eons. A healthy coral reef breaks 95% of a wave's energy. They protect our homes, they protect our businesses and our hotels from storm surge and from sea level rise. They provide jobs and they provide tourism. They support 25% of marine biodiversity, 12% of the world's fisheries, and yet only 4% of the planet is made up of coral reefs. Where we're taking the idea of coral reefs to the next phase is really interesting, and it's something that I am very passionate about and love, which is the idea of ocean shot, which is in areas where there are no reefs or where the reefs have collapsed because we've lost about a third of coral reefs. How do we bring that ecosystem service, that habitat creation, that coastal protection back? So what we're doing is we're doing the science to learn what is the structure of a reef, how is it shaped in order to break wave energy, how is it shaped in order to provide habitat for fish, for octopus, for lobster, and then mimicking that shape, building it and putting it in the ocean in areas where we know it can have an effect to protect the shoreline, to create resilience, and to create habitat and fisheries. I'll give you another example. Mangroves sequester 4 times more carbon than even tropical rainforests, but they do more than that. So they support fisheries. They are great at filtering water and keeping water clear and clean. They're fantastic for flood control. They form a great buffer between the land and the sea. So taken together, these nature-based solutions for mangroves are phenomenal. And then the management of these mangroves, the restoration of mangroves, provides new kinds of jobs in these communities. Nature-based solutions were the original technology. We're just now beginning to realize it and use it. Without finance, nothing's going to happen. That's the truth. The private sector should get involved because investing in small island nations, particularly in hospitality or in sustaining nature, provides a return on investment. Hotels, resorts rely on gorgeous nature for their guests to enjoy, and the old way was to cut down everything and then to try and landscape it back to what looked like a normal, natural area. When the hospitality industry approaches a development and goes, what is there already? What nature, what landscape is there, and what services is it providing to us that we can leverage and enhance? That changes the whole equation. The hospitality industry has a unique opportunity to create nature-based solutions, to align with nature and natural processes, to create resilience and sustainability, to help the islands through the transition of climate change, while at the same time being economically viable, getting return on investment, and creating new types of jobs, which for the private sector makes a great deal of sense. Collaboration is essential. None of us can do this on our own. We need the government and we need the hospitality industry working very closely together. And then bringing in the community is key as well. If we get all of those in the same room and taking action, I'm so hopeful about where we'll end up. If we do nothing, we are turning our back on 65 million people. If we do nothing, the outcome is dire. If we do something, we have a real opportunity.
In the coming decades, kelp may well turn out to be one of the most important natural resources that we have.
Seaweed cultivation offers a really exciting potential new food system, both as a nutritious vegetable, but also for use in fertilizer.
Globally, we have tens of thousands of miles of coastline able to cultivate seaweeds.
No plant on Earth grows faster than brown kelp.
In some areas of the world, giant kelp will grow up to 3 feet a day. It can have a huge impact.
Its capacity for climate change mitigation is unparalleled.
The landscape of the west coast of Scotland is perfect for kelp farming. We have fjord-like inlets and lochs, variable depth and nutrient-rich waters. We are cultivating natural kelp forests which protect the coast against coastal erosion. We harvest between 90 to 100 tonnes per site.
Atlantic Mariculture was founded in order to explore the potential for the Scottish seaweed farming industry. We were making fresh food products, but we had a lot of kelp left over. and we want to ensure that all of our processes are zero waste. We realised that a really great use for this was fertiliser.
Kelp offers a broad range of nutrients that helps restore the health of the soil and its ability to sequester carbon and encourage healthy root and plant growth. Over the past few decades, farmers have developed a reliance on inorganic fertilizers. Inorganic fertilizers strip life from the soil, reduce their ability to store carbon, and keep a hold of water. Food and products grow in size, but reduce in nutritional value. We see plants more prone to abiotic stress, including disease and drought. Liquid kelp fertilizer is not the same. Farmers should be able to use less insecticides to fight off disease and fungal infections that affect their crop, while seeing greater yields. Kelp fertilizer can help plants become more nutritionally dense. It's an immediately scalable and environmentally sustainable practice. Provides us with a way of utilizing a natural resource, being the ocean, for land and food production. The first step is to bring our seaweed in when it's still wet, fresh and alive. These pieces here are only a couple of days old. They already show some degradation. Being a completely natural process, it is beginning to smell, which is one of the delightful effects of brewing seaweed fertilizer. The oily, slimy coat that still remains on this piece is actually a bacterial film, which is what does the legwork in the breakdown process. We leave it in tanks with the right bacterial cultures that leave us with a perfect biostimulant and fertilizer. It's ready when it contains the right balance of acidity, nutrients, and growth hormones to apply on arable crops, horticultural sites, trees, and grass.
Kelp farming can provide a win-win for the ocean. It cleans the surrounding waters from agricultural runoff and waste from neighbouring fish farms, and is brilliant as a habitat for a lot of other marine creatures.
We're constantly amazed by the biodiversity engendered from our farms, and the sheer diversity of species is really incredible. That really brings a focus onto just how important seaweed cultivation is for the environment in general. Having been involved in the agricultural industry for most of my life, it means a lot to me to be finally putting something back. We are regenerating and having a positive effect.
We hope in the years to come that farmers will make the shift from synthetic fertilizers to organic products entirely. This will have a huge impact on our food production, productivity, and our soil health.
There is a step change in attitudes. I think seaweed has a big role to play in regenerative farming practices.
By getting it onto people's plates and into our soils, we can really show how exciting it is as a sustainable product of the future.
Human-caused climate change has had a huge impact at the ocean. There's increasing sea temperatures, there's ocean acidification, more storms, and rising sea levels all interact to have a devastating effect.
Sea level rise is going to damage all coastal ecosystems, all coastal communities, and it's going to be a very, very dramatic shift that we're going to see.
The coastlines, the smaller islands, are the most vulnerable communities to the impacts of climate change and biodiversity loss.
Sustainable seaweed farming can help fishers adapt to climate change by buffering declines in overexploited fish stocks, reduce the effects of ocean acidification and deoxygenation, and also by helping to diversify livelihoods. My name is Nick Hill and I'm co-founder and CEO of Coast 4C.
The good thing with seaweed farming is it does not require fresh water. It does not require big space, so it does not compete with other food crops that we need to grow. And it does not also require fertilizer and pesticides. The carrageenan extracts are used in food, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, and even personal care like toothpaste and sunscreens. Globally, seaweed farming could provide a big opportunity for us to actually break away from the petrochemical-based systems. I am Amado Blanco. I am co-founder and COO of Costa Rican.
These small-scale fisher-farmer communities in places like the Philippines have been producing seaweed as part of their culture for many decades. We saw an opportunity to leverage their ability with seaweed, tap into this opportunity with the growing interest in the seaweed market, and help to drive positive change for the ocean, the climate, and for the people in those communities.
Resilience in these communities is very important. A lot of these communities have seen the direct impact of climate change. Odette is the strongest typhoon to hit Bohol in the last 100 years.
Nga kanang tiguang sa evacuation ay kung ilaran ninyo nga ang dagat maabot diri kay tiguang na lang ko.
Nagkuha na gid siya, taga liog na sa kuan, naglangoy na tong dool sa konserba. Baybayon sa tubig aton during sa kuan. Naguba ang mga balay, pambot niya, mga guso na mo na kuan, nawala.
Regenerative farming is helping secure sustainable sources of livelihoods for communities as a mechanism for restoring degraded marine ecosystems to ensure that these coastal communities are really prepared, really have the capability to recover or at the very least survive after the impacts of climate change.
Ka-observe ang kuan, kami nga mga kuan mananagat, ang isda mo nagna sa kuan. Layo niya. Panahon pud ka mag-init siya katong duol sa kuan, baybayon ng isda nga matay pud siya.
We have experienced declines in fish catch over the last few decades. So when people are heavily dependent on fishing for their livelihood, then that's a very bad thing.
Di nasama sa una nga kuan, labi na karon nga gi bagyo murag kanang kuan. Ang mga isda ba kay murag nangawa. Siguro pud tungod tingali sa ato ang kuan kanang naay mga puy-anan sa isda murag naguba pud siya sa bagyo.
Sustainable seaweed farming, that's very important to the communities that we're working because that provides them an opportunity to supplement fishing.
So ang panggusto dako kayo ikatabang sa kuan, pamilya kay kuan pod ni alternate sa pagpangisda kay nakita na to ng kuan nga medyo nihit na ang kuan sa kadagatan ng isda.
Restorative seaweed farming is a good platform for ensuring that people are not only earning money to meet their day-to-day requirement, we are also empowering communities so that they can support efforts to secure marine biodiversity and fish catch in the long term.
We have helped to set up more efficient value chains for seaweed in the Philippines by shortening that value chain, reducing the number of players between the seaweed farmers and the eventual markets. We help to increase access to price, help them to achieve a fair price for the products that they receive, and we help them to access technologies, seaweed farming methods that increase their production and ultimately benefit their income.
So nagkinahanglan mi anang mga kanang PC, mga labi na gyud ang seedling. Mao gid na siya, maora man gid na siya amo ang kasagaran nga kung ano katong pang-usok niya kabilya, katong mga bot niya. Ang amo pong gigamit nga imbis mamutol mi og mangrove, so katunang mga katong bag-o na tong gi-adapt nga katong sa eco-seaweeds nato, maayo gito siya kay ang tubo sa atong gusto, nindot kay tubo gikan sa tumoy padung sa pikas tumoy, parihas ra gyud siya tubo.
Seaweed farming can be a good tool for communities to adapt the impacts of climate change. There are studies that suggest that actually seaweed farms can sequester carbon. It can also offset the impacts of oxygenation.
The oceans have been underestimated in their importance in fighting climate change. Carbon is stored in coastal ecosystems in the sediment, and the sediment has no oxygen, it's capped, and that carbon doesn't return to the atmosphere.
Seaweed is very effective at storing carbon because it grows faster than any plant, so it takes up carbon incredibly quickly.
Oceans can play a really important part in the circular bioeconomy because we can capture CO2 from the atmosphere, grow it in a kelp or a seaweed, and then make products that we use in our society.
Small-scale fishing communities live in all coastal areas of the ocean, and they are the people who have the knowledge of the marine resources and how to restore the ocean. Our vision is to mobilise the collective action of these small-scale fishers to help restore the oceans and restore the nutrient balances that are so important for our climate. By working with them, harnessing their collective knowledge and setting them up in the right way with the right tools, then they could have a huge impact on restoring the world's oceans and climate.
Miami is a really unique place, and it's really tied to the coast. We like to live next to the water, and with all of that, we are uniquely vulnerable to climate change.
Another massive hurricane has hit Florida in the early hours of this morning.
We see hurricanes and storms that intensify more rapidly. The temperature is increasing, and we have sea level rise.
We have taken out a lot of natural ecosystems and infrastructure, and that has increased our vulnerability. So if we do not protect our coastline, it will cost trillions of dollars in the US. This is going to happen across the globe. But we need to find solutions.
We're trying to design something that is inspired by nature, something that will be sustainable and also efficient. Wave force can really destroy our structures. Even small waves of 4 cubic feet of water is approximately 260 pounds. That is also the average weight of an NFL football player. And of course, a wave is not one player, it's a large amount of players coming again and again. We need something like a speed bump in the highway, slowing down the energy of the waves, protecting the coastline. Traditional shoreline protection structures sometimes overpower nature, and they tend to bounce back the wave energy rather than dissipate it. And they also do not provide habitat.
One of the most exciting pieces of new technology in South Florida is sea hives.
When we started Sea Hive, we're trying to integrate nature and create solutions that do not only bounce back the energy, but actually absorb part of the energy. The hexagonal pattern that we use, the beehive, is inspired by the bees so that we can optimize the material use, but also create something which is very stable and efficient in terms of the energy dissipation. In Miami Beach, we're working with corals. Here in Wahoo Bay, we're working with mangroves.
The Sea Hive is intended to be not only a system for coastal protection, but a living laboratory. It can turn into an artificial reef, but it can also support the growth of coastal plants. Historically, Miami has two powerful ecosystems, coral reefs and mangroves. They offer a first line of protection against waves, against storms. They break the energy from the ocean, but these ecosystems facing many threats, not only in Florida, but globally. And this can be development, the construction of roads, aquaculture, conversion for agriculture. Sometimes we don't have the time that is required for natural regeneration of the forest. So we need to intervene.
So our installation is basically a series of sea hives that are put together, stacked in a pyramid or a little bit trapezoidal there. And we provide the substrate, a first line of defense for the corals and mangroves while well established.
The way that we planted the mangroves was very easy. We fill this with gravel at the bottom, then there is a combination of sand and organic soil, and then on top we deposited more gravel to stabilize the soil.
Mangroves dissipate wave energy. It's the roots that are going to pick up and create that complex structure. There is a component there with the empty space inside those sea hives that will allow the mangroves to pick up. You can see fish living. There's a lot of things there that might find a home here. We also try to capture carbon as mangroves will attract and store some of the CO2. Hybrid solutions provide, if properly designed, the best out of both worlds. So they provide us a structure which is established quite fast, and then with an added layer of performance coming from nature. Our installation in Miami Beach is working with corals. In the laboratory setting, we tested different types of corals. We tested staghorn corals and boulder corals and combinations of the two. We realized that staghorn corals, the ones that look like trees with all the branches, can dissipate more wave energy because of their structure, while the boulder corals are stronger. So we have a combination of staghorn and boulder corals that will allow us to dissipate energy. We saw that just the skeletons can provide up to 60% more wave energy dissipation than the bare reef structures. We have projects that we reached 75%, 85%. Of course, here we have a pilot. This pilot can be scaled up in terms of the width, the height, and also the depth here can really provide a template that we can use in other places so that we can do infrastructure projects that integrate in nature.
We know that it will cost over $3 trillion by 2100 if we do not adapt. And it's really, really important that we get this financing right. One of the key components of Beehive is that they are proving natural coastal protections are self-repairing. In the long run, it's cheaper to invest in nature-based solutions because you don't have to do the same kind of maintenance that you would have to do with just gray infrastructure that will rot out over a certain amount of time.
What is critical here is that we have the performance of the Sea Hive as a system, because then we can go to the stakeholders and talk about the green interventions.
We can bring it to the financiers and say, look, this is where we should spend our money.
Projects like this allow us to see the performance in real-world conditions. Sea Hive as a system is versatile, so the solution is transferable all around the world.
You could take a Sea Hive from here and put it in New York and use it for protection with oysters.
We live in cities by the water. Over 40% of the global population living near the coastline. Nature there is the reason that we established our position, but also is one of our allies in protecting us. It's critical that we start acting now and we start intervening in a way that is impactful.
We've already seen a lot of impact on coral reefs from a number of human-caused sources. Firstly, climate change has caused some devastation, a slight increase in temperature, and all the things that rely on the corals, the fish, the invertebrates, even the algae, can be devastated. But direct things like removing the large predators such as coral trout, which is so important and can be easily removed from whole reef areas. A lionfish very quickly proliferated through the Caribbean and have had a devastating effect on the fish there.
Belize has the second largest barrier reef in the entire world. We have a wide diversity of corals here, and we also have corals that are critically endangered, such as the elkhorn coral. I'm Nathalie Mackenzie, and I'm the Fisheries Coordinator for Blue Ventures Belize.
When Blue Ventures first established its programs here in Belize, we launched a long-term coral reef monitoring program for reef health. So very soon after we arrived, we recognized the need to start monitoring the lionfish invasion. My name is Jen Chapman, and I'm the Country Director for Blue Ventures in Belize. So the lionfish that we find here in Belize originally comes from the Indo-Pacific, and it was accidentally introduced into the Caribbean in the 80s. We call it an invasive species because that specifically tells us that it is having a negative impact on the native reef ecosystem.
Lionfish eat everything, including juvenile fishes and even keystone species such as parrotfish, which definitely compromises the health and integrity of our coral reef here.
Parrotfish will feed on the algae that is competing for space on the reef with corals. And so we know that this very, very wide diet is having a really negative impact on populations sort of low down the food web on coral reefs. So it's about reducing the lionfish population below this threshold whereby it no longer has a negative impact on the reef. So in areas that are accessible to fishers, the number one actors and allies are small-scale fishers.
Blue Ventures works with the Belize Fisheries Department along with other marine protected area co-managers and members of the community. Combined research led to the launch of the Belize National Lionfish Management Strategy to reduce lionfish populations across marine protected areas here in Belize.
Marine protected areas not only protect biodiversity, but they also allow fish to prosper, get larger, produce more babies, which then spill over to the other fished areas.
Members of the brigade get training in advanced open water to conduct the survey, which outlines the number of lionfish found in a specific protected area.
We've been able to curb the amount of the invasion. We now see more smaller lionfish in our shores. The bigger ones are in deeper waters, so it's a good sign that our efforts have been fruitful.
Over several years, Blue Ventures has worked closely with several cooperatives here in Belize in different capacities, one of which was to help connect these cooperatives to buyers of invasive lionfish.
We started to hold outreach events regularly across the country and really trying to promote the uptake of lionfish consumption, both at home and in restaurants.
Lionfish is very succulent, it's very nutritious, it's a delicacy. The lionfish is being sold locally to restaurants, to hotels, to local consumers, and we just sent our first shipment to United States of America.
Many restaurants had signed to be part of this initiative where they sell lionfish at their facilities. And in partnership, we've also engaged international buyers for lionfish.
We also started working with the Belize Lionfish Jewelry Group. We knew that the fins could be turned into beautiful jewelry. For fishers to sell their fins to jewelers was going to just increase that incentive to catch lionfish.
We are a women's group. We're from different coastal zones of Belize, and we make lionfish jewelry. We went on a workshop in 2015.
And then there's three little...
They showed us different forms utilizing the lionfish, and we did practices and we came up with the jewelry. We use the pelvic fin, the cabral fin, and the dorsal fin. It takes minimum of 3 days to catch the fish. Then we have to dry it out. Then we treat. Then we make into a piece of jewelry.
Our marine ecosystem is the backbone of our economy here in Belize. Our marine ecosystem supports not only our tourism industry, but it also supports our fisheries sector.
It's been really valuable to have a regular buyer who is not as susceptible to global impacts or changes in the tourism. That is what the cooperatives really, really need in order to confidently buy, process, and store lionfish at their facility. It needs to make business sense for all actors along the supply chain.
It's very important to protect coral reefs, not just for their aesthetic beauty, but also livelihood. A Pacific island relying on their coral reef for their food and exports. Secondly, of course, their biodiversity, and also their coastal protection. They do protect the adjacent coast from the ravages of cyclones and other storms. Marine ecosystems can be rebalanced and they can recover. We've seen it in places where fisheries have been stabilised, coastal protection has happened. Certainly, when sustainable fishing has been brought into a local estuary, we have seen recovery of the habitat and the fish stocks can bounce back. So communities can play a huge role in protecting coral reefs and the life that they support.
Any effort to address some of the direct impacts that are felt beyond climate change do indirectly increase the resilience of that ecosystem to climate change threats as well. By reducing a direct threat to coral reef ecosystems, as well as strengthening community-led management, the ecosystems are going to have a better chance in the variety of impacts that they face.
Human-caused climate change has had a devastating effect on the oceans through increased sea temperatures, ocean acidification, sea level rises, and things like massive increase in major storm events. The ocean can mitigate its climate change globally. For one thing, it's an enormous mass and it has huge inertia. So it's done a good job already. It has soaked up the extra heat, it's soaked up the extra carbon dioxide very well. It's just we're now at a tipping point and that's becoming more and more recognised. I'm Professor David Booth. I'm the Professor of Marine Ecology here at the University of Technology in Sydney. In Australia, we're a global warming hotspot, and it's because of our East Australian current. Brings not only some cool things down like the tropical fish that we study, but also warm water, which sounds lovely, but in a place which hasn't had warm water in the past, it's quite devastating. The fisheries, seagrass, all those sorts of things die off. Ocean warming also has an interactive effect on oxygen. When you heat seawater up, oxygen leaves the water, yet the fish need more, for instance, because it's warmer. So it's like a double whammy effect on those, and those oxygen black spots can be quite devastating as well. The deep sea, which is 60% of the volume of life on Earth, has been affected quite badly, not just through temperature rise, but also through ocean acidification. With this increased CO2 drawdown, they're becoming more acid. And of course, oceans are usually very stable, so the animals and plants and other organisms that live there are not used to changes in pH. So it affects a lot of them, particularly the animals with a calcium carbonate shell, which basically dissolves when it gets too acid. Another aspect of ocean climate change that is really gaining attention recently is the rise of sea levels, partly due to the melting of the ice caps, but also due to the expansion of water when we heat it. And so, unfortunately, many places like the wonderful low-lying islands in the Pacific and Indian Ocean, so Kiribati, for instance, inundation and a lot of their freshwater supplies that sit under the island are being polluted by salt water. So quite devastating, and many islands have been uninhabitable. Overfishing has had a devastating impact globally on not only the fish themselves, but also biodiversity in the oceans. In many of the poorer nations that are poorly regulated, fisheries have taken everything. They've taken all the animals in the ocean that they can get their hands on. But even in places like Australia, we've recently shown that we've suffered a devastating drop in the number of fishing areas, except in protected areas from fishing. Firstly, because species are removed. Usually they're the more common species, so that's not usually the problem. But the fact they're top predators can have all sorts of trickle-down effects on food chains. But also, bycatch can remove a lot of biodiversity. For instance, in the north of Australia, the prawn trawl there, they have 60% bycatch, and that includes seahorses, turtles, dugongs, etc. Now these animals are quite devastated by fishing. So a number of fishing practices globally have devastated fish stocks and biodiversity. The big one, of course, is bottom trawling, and so that's when a net is drawn along the bottom to catch the fish that live there. That can be small scale in an estuary or large scale like across the ocean depths. If it touches the bottom, it inevitably destroys the habitat, and we now know it's very fragile down there. All sorts of habitat that get caught up, as well as the animals that live in them. The recovery of that area is decades, if ever. But also there's other practices. People use cyanide, bleach to catch fish in coral reef areas. Aquaculture, if not done properly, can rip up coastal habitat and destroy the biodiversity that's there. Sustainable fisheries are so important if done fairly locally. They really can form in many countries a backbone around the whole community. They are a wonderful source of food. In many Pacific islands, sustainable fisheries have really saved their economy. So marine protected areas are one option to look after the oceans. These are pretty much the areas of the ocean which are left alone and allow replenishment of the other areas for fisheries. Now these areas can be large or small. They not only protect biodiversity, but they also allow fish to prosper, get larger, produce more babies, which then spill over to the other fished areas. So properly arranged, it'll have mutual benefits. How can we get things in the ocean right again? Well, first of all, we have to act locally. And so that would mean getting local fisheries sustainable. But the big thing at the moment is climate change. We need to redress the use of coal and gas. So communities can play a huge role in protecting oceans and the life that they support. Locally, source sustainable seafood, don't throw plastics away, safeguard against pollution. Also, at a larger level, given that climate change has a devastating effect, you should lobby your local politicians to make sure they're on board with stopping or reducing dangerous practices. Marine ecosystems can be rebalanced and they can recover. We've seen it in places where fisheries have been stabilised, coastal protection has happened. Unfortunately, climate change has a wider ambit and we need also to address that on the global scale. In the next decades, if we don't do something, the ocean will lose its capacity to help us. And if we improve things, it'll gain it back again.
For 3.8 billion years, evolution has been rewarding and picking those technologies and those strategies that help continue life over the long haul. The things that are good for life. The organisms that we are surrounded by are trying to do exactly what we're trying to do. They're trying to build their homes, they're trying to feed themselves, they're trying to power themselves, they're trying to make materials, they're tucking their kids in to bed at night. Nature has learned to do everything we want to do without harm to the planet. We're realizing that we've been completely separate, thinking we're immune to natural selection or these natural laws of how to be a good earthling. And it's time for us to figure out how to live here in a way that enhances this place. Biomimicry is innovation inspired by nature. In practice, biomimicry is when you're about to design or invent something, you look to biological models for advice about how to create something that is more sustainable on this planet. I grew up in suburban New Jersey, and yet I was outside in any natural place, any crevice of a natural place, literally the cracks in the sidewalks. I was fascinated. My parents knew they had this wild child on their hands. I'm Janine Benyus, and I'm co-founder of the Biomimicry Institute. I'm a biologist at the design table. That's what I do. I bring 3.8 billion years of life's genius to the people who make our world. Well, a great example is if you ride the high-speed train in Japan. It used to be called the bullet train because it had a rounded front, but that used to cause all kinds of sonic booms going through tunnels. And now it's very sharp, and it's modeled on the kingfisher's beak. It's a bird that dives into the water after fish with hardly a splash, so it knows how to go from one density of medium to another. So they put that on the front of the high-speed train, and it reduces the noise, and it also increases the speed 10% and reduces the amount of electricity used by 15%. Biomimicry is suitable for most human endeavors. How we power ourselves, how we make materials, how we build our homes, how we conduct our businesses. It has energy sipping ideas, drag reduction ideas, new ways to move through water or move through air in ways that are really, really energy efficient. There are these answers that are inherently sustainable and regenerative that are all around us. You begin to look at these organisms not as resources, but as mentors, as teachers. You know, if you come in here, I'll show you something. When a pine cone comes out, it's usually closed up, but it has this ability to open up when the conditions are just right, because one part of its scale responds to moisture and absorbs it, the other doesn't, and so it bends like this, and it opens up. And so the seeds, which are in there, are able to come out at just the right time, with just the right moisture conditions. And people have studied this and then mimicked it in building skins that close when it's raining and then open to release humid air from inside the building when it needs to. And it doesn't have any engine or anything, it's just in the material itself. By making the material a different kind of material on both sides, one that responds to moisture and one that doesn't. Another company is trying to replicate these really functional surfaces in the natural world. They're making, importantly, anti-reflective surfaces that are modeled on the moth eye. They're able to etch that onto a solar panel, for instance, with light, so that the solar panel is anti-reflective, meaning it absorbs a lot more sunlight, and then it's also self-cleaning, which is super important. All of these individual technologies in the natural world that fit into an ecosystem where the organisms have learned to work together in a way that actually enhances their place. So whenever you're looking at sustainable products, you can certainly look to the natural world, but you can also look to the natural world for your processes, how you manufacture, and you can look to the natural world for system-level strategies. How do you bring this to market? How do you put it in an ecosystem of other products that together are actually going to give back to the earth, right? Not just take from it. What about your supply chains? Are they creating as much positive, beneficial ecosystem services as they could? And how can you change management so that they can? And what about your employees? What about their backyards? Can they be supporting pollinators? Can they be sequestering carbon? So then customers are next. This idea of tasking ourselves and our designs with this next level biomimicry is a completely new one. A lot of people are really turning now towards the natural world. There's nothing that we've done that has changed design so much. It seriously has pushed design farther than anything I've seen.
%45% of all plant species in the world are threatened with extinction.
We need to help mend those systems and get some of these species back out again.
There's all kinds of properties that these plants possess that we don't even begin to understand. Restoration is needed more than ever in the whole history of humankind.
It's absolutely key to our survival on the planet.
The Millennium Seed Bank is really a giant store of life, where we've collected and conserved seeds from plants around the world.
Behind me are the vaults, kept at -20 degrees.
They're flood-proof, bomb-proof, radiation-proof, and they're highly secure.
We have more than 40,000 different species here.
So you have that amazing insurance policy, really, for those plants which have been conserved to date. But in addition, we have an awful lot of research that goes on here.
Cryopreservation, restoration, germination, quality of the seed,
medicines for the future,
conservation,
food security,
resilience to extreme heat,
crop diversity.
We haven't even begun to understand the complexity of plants.
And that's why it's important that we conserve them.
I just can't help feeling that there are amazing discoveries that are going to revolutionize the way we live, thanks to us saving these little individual species in one place.
So at the moment, there are various challenges facing biodiversity around the globe. Global food security is a huge issue. We're reliant on very few species of crops for all of our nutritional intake. I think some 90% comes from only 15 crops. So they're very vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. There's some 70,000, no, I think even more, wild plants that are known to be edible, but they're not classified as foodstuffs. We focus only on some, I think, 300 that are classified as foodstuffs. So we really need to just grow this area on our understanding of what we can eat. Diversify not only the sources of our food, but also how we grow them. Seed banking is just hugely important. We go out and collect these seeds from the wild populations.
I've seen some of the things that collectors do. Getting to those remote places to find the rarest plants is a really thrilling and chilling adventure.
No human ever collected plants here.
We've had seed collectors go out on trips and they've arrived and they've been too late. That plant didn't exist there anymore. So we have a pressing need to get there now.
It's very tempting to think that by putting something in cold storage, it means you can shut the door and just let seeds sleep gently. Unfortunately, that is not necessarily the case.
The first step is drying. So the seeds will be dried in our dry room. Once the seeds are dried, they're cleaned. And then the seeds are also checked for quality. So they'll be x-rayed to check that the seeds are full and not damaged. Once they've gone through that whole process, they'll be banked at minus 20 degrees Celsius in our seed vault. Seeds can live for, some cases, hundreds or even possibly thousands of years.
There are limitations to seed bankings. You can't store every species of plant in a seed bank.
We need to find other solutions for them.
There are some species which can't tolerate drying, so we use cryopreservation techniques. What we do is we move what we call the embryo, and because that's much smaller, we can then dry it very quickly, and then that can then be cryopreserved. This is our cryopreservation facility. So in here currently we've got 3 vessels which are filled with liquid nitrogen. They're stored in the vapor phase. So the temperature there is around minus 170 degrees Celsius. So it's very cold inside. That's why I've got these blue gloves on. But even then, I can still feel the cold coming through and the gloves are starting to freeze. Currently, we have probably around 5,000 samples in these vessels.
So we started off as very much, let's conserve as much as we can, but if we want to save plants from extinction, we won't do that by keeping them in a cold room. Ultimately, the destination of all of the materials that come here is to find a pathway for them to be returned to the wild.
Seeds are really important in restoration because they are basically plants that have been flat packed and so reduced down to sort of tiny little lightweight packages. They've got all the essential ingredients. So when you have a natural disturbance in nature, all the surrounding trees will disperse their seeds into the area and it can regenerate. But when you have massive landscape scale degradation caused by humans, there just aren't enough seeds in the landscape to do this. So sometimes nature needs a helping hand and we need to introduce plant materials into the landscape to do this. The most successful restoration project that I've ever seen is our partners in northern Thailand. There are forests there that used to be barren hillsides of maize and cabbages, and now you wouldn't know that they're not natural forests. What we're doing is helping them to find ways to scale up seed supply. And one of the big questions is, will these plants that we're planting today be able to survive climate change? A freezer full of seeds, they might be alive, but that's not a forest. That's not a meadow. So by taking them out, planting them in the landscapes and just seeing them flourish into an actual habitat, and then you see wildlife moving in, then you see more species coming in, I think it's one of the most satisfying things you can do.
And that's why it's important that we conserve them so that we have that potential for the future by the time that our understanding increases. We're buying time, really. That's what a seed bank does.
I think what our biggest challenge is going to be is, in a way, when we're bringing seeds into the bank, it's like we're taking apart the pieces of a natural ecosystem. It's like there's a wonderful puzzle and we're taking it apart. We put it in a cold storage, and then when we take them out again, it's, oh, where are the corners? We need to work out how those pieces can be put back into a beautiful new wild landscape where they will thrive.
We should always let nature inspire us, simply because nature has found solutions through trial and error over periods of many hundreds of millions of years. We reckon there's only about 2.9% of the land surface of this planet which is still functionally intact in terms of ecosystems. That means 97% and more of the land surface of this planet has already been damaged by humans. And ecosystem-based management consists of doing one job extremely well: to observe that landscape and understand what's naturally happening in that landscape. What kind of trees, plants and shrubs regenerate? What kind of animals make their homes there? Once you begin to have a systems approach to the planet, to understand that it's composed of many interlocking parts, then suddenly there's a whole bunch of things that fall into place.
For our indigenous people, conservation is being part of a larger community. Western society separated themselves from it. So it's our responsibility to teach people who don't know that knowledge what it's all about. This place is very special, and this was a traditional land where our people used to come and hunt the buffalo because this was buffalo territory. Our culture, to a large extent, is based on and related to that buffalo. And so when there was no buffalo to be seen, our elders' dream was, we need to bring those buffalo back. From a Western point of view, it seems that we're always looking at those animals, those buffalo, that we human beings are going to go and save. When in reality, if we let them be, that eco-balance that they bring about will save us. Then you'll have true conservation.
We always hear that there's too much livestock in the world and it's responsible for a lot of land degradation. That's not quite accurate. What's responsible for the land degradation is the mismanagement of livestock.
In February of 2017, the buffalo were brought back to Banff National Park. And our people, our indigenous people, they worked with the national park, and their approach was a slow release program. We'll put the buffalo in small pens, get them to know the area, and then we'll enlarge the pastures until we take all the fences down. And now the buffalo have had their firstborn over here in their territory, and because of that, they now claim this as their home. The buffalo is the best environmentalist you can have because it is an eco-engineer. Wherever the buffalo roams, plants reappear, birds, even insects and so forth, which all contribute to our overall existence in the long run. It's helping us bring the land back to where it should be. And if we cooperate with them, hey, the land will come back much faster than if we try to do it as humans alone.
So suddenly, your animals have become a part of the solution and have regenerated the soil. Why is that so important? All that explosion of life that you see above the ground also means an explosion of life below the ground. It means roots of all of these plants going deep into the soil, and these roots are made of carbon. So you're putting carbon into the soil doing it this way.
It's also a keystone species when it comes to culture. Our songs, our stories, our ceremonies are all related to that buffalo. Having the buffalo in that circle, sitting next to us, so to speak, is like having grandpa, grandma next to you for security. And that buffalo also brings about a balance in the relational networks amongst humans. It does me great good and happiness. Actually, it brings health back to our people to have those buffalo roaming freely over in their traditional territory.
Many of the services that nature provides today are just taken for granted. We don't cost, for instance, the air that we breathe, many of the natural resources that we use. The fact that they are not priced into the economy does not mean that they don't have value. So therefore, we really need to rethink the theory of value that goes beyond pricing.
We set up Kissinia Environmental in order to protect, to restore and to reconnect Australia's natural landscapes. What we're passionate about is facilitating investment for individuals and businesses and even governments in the long-term protection and long-term management of land for biodiversity. My name's Paul Dettman and I'm the founder of Kissinia Environmental. Kissinia's been around about 20 years now and we've done over 100 projects working on landscapes. Protected about 20,000 hectares and worked across multiple states and even overseas. The long-term aim of Kissinia is twofold. Firstly, that 30% of all landscapes would be managed and protected for nature. And secondly, that those landscapes would be connected in a way that's functional for all species. So I'm a sixth-generation farmer, and one of my ancestors came out to Australia in the early 1840s and grew up with Indigenous people. They taught him how to hunt and to swim, and they taught him much bush lore.
Well, most Ngurrindjeri would think about our land as the place where we belong. We don't think that it belongs to us. We think we belong to it. I'm Clyde Rigney and I'm a Ngurrindjeri Corny, Ngurrindjeri man.
It's home, it's part of home, and it's in you. I don't think you ever stop being a custodian. You don't really break that connection. I'm Rose Rigney and I'm a Ngurrindjeri Mimini. Grew up around this river.
Traditional owners have a special relationship with land and a special way of understanding the relationships between people, land and nature.
The Ngurrindjeri have been re-implementing traditional land management practices that have occurred throughout this landscape for thousands of years. I'm Chris Lunardi and I'm Revegetation Manager at Cassinia Environmental. We came into this relationship with the Ngarrindjeri not so much to teach, but to learn.
We seek to embed the aspirations of Indigenous people into the management of the land. We try to develop a pathway by which we can transition ownership through to traditional owners over time. Where we are now on Mount Sandy is one of our favourite projects. The ability to work in this landscape and protecting Indigenous biodiversity, deep relationships with traditional owners makes this project really special.
Well, Mount Sandy is my grandmother on my mum's side. That's where she came from.
That's what we like about this whole idea of Mount Sandy bringing people together. We think we grow the environment, but we also recognise that the environment's growing us.
So this land was used for grazing before we purchased it. It would have totally decimated the biodiversity that we've been so fortunate to be able to capture.
The Mount Sandy property is surrounded by cleared land and cropping land. They are examples of the large-scale land clearing that's occurred over the last couple of hundred years here in South Australia and Australia more broadly. Mount Sandy is quite unique in the fact that it's providing ecosystem services and providing habitat for wildlife. We have aspirations to reconnect Mount Sandy. We're working with the Ngarrindjeri to propagate seedlings and revegetate the property that allow us to extend out to that broader wetland complex.
We've got a nursery that propagates seeds from the Mount Sandy property. We're trying to grow back the plants that come from that space.
It's really important to manage and preserve land like Mount Sandy. They provide really important habitat to some incredibly rare flora and fauna.
We help things like the wetlands, which provides a space for migratory birds, but also the fish life. You're involved in a whole ecosystem.
The things that nature provides us, like the ability to filter water, the ability to provide clean air, but they don't have a bottom line economic value, but are still intrinsically valuable.
Everything that we do has an impact on nature, and of course that comes back to us, and in that sense we maybe don't think to price ecosystem necessarily, but try to understand better their value, therefore try to look for the right incentive to protect that value that goes beyond the price.
At Cassinia, we've been pursuing possibilities for people to be able to invest in biodiversity directly, and one of the ways we've done that is at Mount Sandy by stapling biodiversity units to carbon. So this is allowing companies and individuals to purchase a product that not only has a carbon impact, but also a biodiversity impact. What this really opens up is the potential for biodiversity to become something that everyone could invest in.
And ultimately, the funds will allow us to fully gift the ownership of the Mount Sandy property back to the Ngarrindjeri.
We were custodians of the land, and we're still custodians of the land. A lot of Aboriginal people now have the opportunity to be financed to care for country. It's what we were always meant to be and do. We can teach our kids to care for the country so that the country continues to care for us and everybody that's here.
The end goal for this land is that it will be protected for nature forever. It will be protected purely for the biodiversity and natural value. It will be handed over to traditional owners and will be managed by them in perpetuity for that biodiversity goal.
Whether we are Cassinia Environmental and Ngarrindjeri looking after Mount Sandy, or we're the farmer next door who's cropping or who's got his cows, we are part of the system. We're part of that ecosystem. When you start to see yourself as part of the landscape, as part of that ecosystem, you realise that you're not only just connected to a 200 hectare patch, you are connected globally to a much, much broader system.
So I'm standing in the depths of Somerset in a marsh, so we can take these fibres and put them in a puffer jacket like the one I'm wearing today. Ponder is this single idea of, can we build a new material supply chain which is inherently healing to the planet. So inside each one of these seed heads is around 200,000 seed clusters, and they have been designed over millions of years of their evolution to be able to blow around in the wind. But what it also enables them to be very good at is creating a kind of cluster structure that holds a lot of air pockets. And the reason that's so important is it creates a very, very effective insulator. And what we do at Ponder is we find a way to separate the fibers that are found within these seed heads from the seeds and the stem and this outside coating. When you think about replacing a material in an apparel garment, you have to think about, what am I replacing? So for us, that could be goose down, it could be virgin polyester, and what are the environmental implications of using those materials? How much water does it take? How much carbon does it emit? How much land do you use in order to produce those materials? Wetlands, and specifically peatlands, are our best land-based store of carbon. They hold twice as much carbon as all of the trees in the world combined, yet hundreds of millions of them have been drained and damaged around the world, leading to huge amounts of carbon emissions. What are the properties of the plants which grow in these environments? How can we leverage the regeneration of these spaces to create new materials? These amazing ecosystems, which unfortunately over the past hundreds of years have become drained and damaged, can actually be leveraged to produce for the world whilst creating a net benefit to biodiversity, to carbon, to cleaning our water and our air as well. Biopuff is an excellent insulator and has a really high clo value within sort of like 10 percentile points of something like a goose down, which is really the kind of premium when it comes to insulation materials.
So we have two products. We have Biopuff Loose Fill, which is a loose fiber form, and then we have Biopuff Wadding, which is a non-woven sheet fabric, which gets cut and sewn into garments. This is an example of what loose fiber would look like. So you can see already it's a lot fluffier and kind of has more volume versus something like this. This is a vegan kind of leather wadding jacket, and if you just touch it, you can feel kind of a slight structural wadding inside. This is a really exciting opportunity to start working with new natural systems to be able to introduce new fibers and new materials and be innovative about it. And the fashion industry is in great need of this. They're one of the most damaging and polluting industries in the world. Over 80% of the fashion industry's environmental impact comes from material sourcing.
So scaling really comes down to a few different factors. One kind of very obvious one is like, how do we ensure that growing this new crop is financially viable and an exciting opportunity for farmers? The second one is perhaps the engineering problem. How do you build a bigger machine that does the same thing? We've got some amazing engineers who work at Ponder to create our manufacturing line and ensure that the system is able to absorb more and more material. Even if the brands that we're working with decide to use 1 or 2% biopuff or 10 or 100, when we're talking about industries that are worth trillions of dollars, the amount of impact that those tiny inflections can have on our natural world, on the regenerative systems we're able to produce, is so large that we can build on tiny steps to create a massive revolution in our supply chains of the future. It's very clear that the fashion industry is really, really keen to change and adopt new materials. Ponder's done a series of high-profile collaborations over the past few years. This started with a very small collection we did with Yukes Net-a-Porter. Since then, we've done showcases with brands like Parley for the Oceans, luxury brands like Stella McCartney. Our vision for the future is a world where we can seamlessly integrate materials like biopuff coming from regenerated wetlands and connecting them directly into these new material supply chains. Alternative materials is 100% a no-brainer.
Erdos grassland is a home to a very precious and special natural fiber, which is cashmere. The crafting of a cashmere garment is an act of devotion, demanding meticulous artistry at every step.
我们是这样认为的，就是这个可持续养殖，我们认为它的核心就是让绒山羊、牧民以及草原生态环境形成一个可持续的这样共存的一个状态。
Now we are reimagining its possibilities through innovation. For the fashion industry, we should embrace changes. Erdos is a Mongolian word meaning the place of many palaces on the grassland. So it is a cultural crossroad where Central Plains civilization and nomadic traditions converge. The world's major cashmere producing regions are ecologically fragile. I think we are leaders in grassland protection and the management of goat population.
我们认为只有保护好草原生态，我们牧民才能养好羊，从而才能产好绒。那么只有养好羊、产好绒，我们才能实现整个这个产业的可持续发展。我们每年会召集周边的牧民，聘请一些专家教授，为牧民免费进行一些动物福利以及可持续发展方面的培训。目的是通过这样的培训，引导牧民从传统的养殖走向一个科学养殖的道路，从而使整个产业更加可持续发展。
Today, we own the complete supply chain from grassland to manufacturing, from research labs to international standard setting. So we are implementing the practices across our entire value chain to ensure ethical and environmentally sound operations at every stage.
同时呢，以减少生产环节的各个环节的碳排放。比如说，我们研究的羊绒纤维的节能染色技术，节能染色技术可以节约染色用水50%以上，每吨用电耗降低45千瓦每小时。同时呢，蒸汽用量减少了0.3吨，染织1吨深色羊绒减少48吨废水的排放。
Through recycling and upcycling, the life cycle of this precious raw material can be extended, forming a closed-loop fashion system, so it can minimize waste in the production process.
我们在羊绒的生产链条里面挖掘我们可以回收的边角下料，进行的再次开发利用，研究它的这个开松技术，以及可使用的产品能够实现回用羊绒的高质利用。
We launched our sustainable collection, the Shine Collection, which means the goodness collection, since 2019, including lines as undyed cashmere, whole garment, recycled cashmere, and much more, all using green technologies, conscious design, and responsible materials.
这样的技术不仅能够提高我们的生产效率，同时呢也能够节约我们水和气还有电。
When it comes to the application of renewable and recycled cashmere, I think educating consumers about the concept and formulating relevant standards and policies are of even greater importance. Today, Erdos Group stands as a global leader in cashmere production, processing, and retail. We recognize our responsibility to educate and to communicate with the world about the true nature of this sector. I hope that through our efforts, we can protect and make good use of this resource, and at the same time, convey the supreme beauty of cashmere to the world.
I grew up in a farming family. We produce mainly fruits, pineapple, banana. We always love to eat pineapple, but we didn't see the prospect of pineapple leaves. Even after working 10 years in textile industry, I didn't see that pineapple leaves can be a good textile material. Finally, I realized everybody is talking about climate change. I see there is a solution.
Turning farm waste into sustainable clothes is absolutely part of the fashion revolution. And what we really need to do is to see value in everything. There is no waste.
I was inspired to create sustainable material for textile industry because we should work with something which is natural and biodegradable and not harmful for the environment. Pineapple leaves produce methane gas, and when it is burned, it produces carbon dioxide. We produce pineapple fiber from wasted pineapple leaves. Now we can say this pineapple fiber can be used for textile material, which is really climate friendly.
Unearth is an innovative material company that has developed new materials using waste fibers from agriculture and replaces the need to use other materials such as cotton, leather, plastic, which are not sustainable. Pineapple leaf fibers, to me, are very special. They're strong, fine, and flexible. And if you think that there is about 27 million tons of pineapple waste produced every year, potentially there to be used, this is an extraordinary positive impact that we could really have. We can make lots of products. We have piña yarn, which is fully biodegradable.
Piña yarn offers an alternative to other yarns that are currently on the market. A 100% piña yarn t-shirt compared to a 100% cotton t-shirt saves up to 20% emissions and 95% water.
And then we have Piñatex. Piñatex, our main product, is 95% renewable using bio-plant-based chemicals. So Piñatex is an alternative to leather and petroleum-based textiles. If we compare Piñatex with leather, Piñatex has a much better environmental credentials. It doesn't use any water, any land, any fertilizers. It's water resistant and it's breathable. Piñatex is used in footwear, but also in fashion accessories, apparel. And we're starting to break into more industrial markets such as insulation. All of our materials are really designed to be reused, recycled, and what I like to say, upcycled, so it doesn't go to waste. Eco-fresh agro in Bangladesh fits exactly with the ethos that we want to work with. small communities, help them out, and together develop a local business.
I'm Johnny, EcoFresh Agro General Factory Manager. এটা আমরা ক্ষেত থেকে কালেক্ট করে আনার পর এই পাতাটা মেশিনে দেওয়া হয়। এই পদার্থটা ফিনিশিংয়ে দেওয়া হয়। বড় বছর পর ওয়াশিং করে ফোকা দেওয়া হয় ওইখানে।
At this stage, the fibre is taken for purification. So essentially what we're doing here is we are cleaning it using no harmful chemicals. These fibres then need to be dried. Then it gets put into this machine and it creates textile grade standard fibre for spinning. Per 1 kilogram of yarn, we save 6 kilograms of CO2 being emitted. We process our pineapple leaf fibre in such a harmless way. We don't use half of the chemicals the rest of the textile industry uses.
We actually don't dye anything because dyeing uses so much water. That's why we are mixing pigments. So there is nearly a waterless process.
Scaling up, fibres like ours are extremely important for our future generations and our planet. Pineapple leaves are only one of the waste materials in this world.
As a EcoFresh Agro, this is just the beginning for the renewable materials. What we have done last 3 years for the pineapple fiber, we can do it for the banana fiber, jute and hemp and linen as well.
We have developed our own supply chain, and we can control through full transparency, collaboration and really strong partnerships throughout the process.
Our workers know for what they are doing. They are doing for the planet. They are making sustainable product, which is good for the environment.
I think it's really important, particularly in today's world, to draw from the culture and the traditional techniques because they root us in our past. We really need to look back in order to look into the future. What I hope is that the future will bring a balance to the use of these natural resources.
When we look into nature, nature will give us the solution. But we have to find it out. We have to dig deeper and bring it to the market. When we are connected with nature, nature will protect us. So let's make a better planet with pineapple leaves.